Good evening. My name, my name is Andy Summers. My full name is Andrew Robb Mcrae Summers. I'm a photographer and an architect. I'm here to try and talk about the space between these two disciplines. Why two names? Well, creatively, I find it liberating not to go under one name. Robb Mcrae are my middle names. For architecture, I'm Andy Summers, and for photography, I'm Robb Mcrae. The disciplines have different speeds. So they sort of demand a different engagement, and also basically if I do a shipbuilding, it doesn't affect my photography work, and vice versa. Why am I interested in these disciplines? Well, to be totally honest with you, it's not particularly unique. When I was a kid, I played with Lego for architecture, and I got a bit obsessed with that. I also got a bit obsessed with photography because my parents gave me some disposable cameras, and my first shoot was when I was 9 in Blairgowrie. I got up at 6 o'clock in the morning, went to photograph rabbits. And I thought I was taking the best pictures in the world. Needless to say, I looked at them a couple of years ago and they were awful. But it was a start. University, obviously it's full pelt for architecture, and I did a lot of travel photography. So it's university work on the left and photography on the right. I lived in Australia as part of the year out in Melbourne for a while, and those photos are so bad because they're scans from sheet film a long time ago. Also, as part of university, I lived in Copenhagen. I did Erasmus, which is the European Union exchange program. And I wrote my dissertation on a Swiss practice called Herzog and de Meuron. And I went to Switzerland for a week to research my dissertation. And this is the Eberswalder Library on the left-hand side by Herzog and de Meuron, and on the right is photographer Thomas Ruff. Herzog and de Meuron engaged with a lot of architects, a lot of artists and photographers, and I came across Thomas Ruff's work. But also the Dusseldorf School, which is led by Bernd and Hilla Becker, and had photographers such as Thomas Struth and Thomas Ruff himself. But then I went back down to London to work. I went for 3 months, and I stayed for 10 years. It happens. But I worked for, my main plan was to try and work for the best architects I possibly could. So I worked for Terry Posson for a little while, but I also worked for Zaha Hadid for 5 years. And I was on the Riverside Museum for 2.5 years on site, building that. I joked that I was hired because I was Scottish to translate stuff from site, which actually was true. But it was a great project, and that was sort of basically, now with hindsight, full pelt architecture career-wise. I travelled a lot when I lived in London for 10 years, and one of the times I went to Japan. And I have these photos on the wall up here because they're really bad. I had no interest in photography whilst I was sort of full pelt career mode architecture-wise, because I found it quite difficult to concentrate on two disciplines, and also when you're getting qualified as an architect, there's not much room for much else. So these are up on the wall because they're really poor. I had no interest in my eye of taking photos. But yeah. In 2010, this is my lovely dad. My dad unfortunately got diagnosed with cancer, and he passed away in 2011. Zaha's office enabled me to come back up to Edinburgh for 10 weeks, and they paid me in full for as long as I wanted to be with my dad. But the point I'm telling you this is because I came out of creative production for about 3.5 months, and I didn't do any architecture, I didn't do any photography. But when I went back down to London, I'd really sort of changed as a person. I know it sounds a bit obvious, but I really had. And my drive for architecture was neutered slightly. So I got back into photography as a discipline quite a lot. I bought a large format camera. This is some of my work as Party Walls. This is sheet film 5x4 negatives. I started to just investigate what I was interested in photography-wise. Some of it was related to architecture, some of it wasn't. But I started essentially to work in two parallel disciplines whilst I still continued to work in Zaha's office. And I developed my photography practice and started to enjoy it a lot more. And to be honest with you, I had always wanted to work for the best architects that I possibly could, so I could leave it. To sort of say to myself that I could work at a particular level internationally, and I could do that. But I did that really with the sole intention that so I could actually leave to do that, because I really wanted to get into sort of cell production and to sort of see how far I could get with that. Some paid work. There's little pound signs at the bottom of these slides. That sort of suggests paid work. And one of the projects I did in London was for the City of London. This is a Sculpture in the City festival where they have sort of quite well-known artists who install work in the city. When I took this picture, I was up a 30-metre crane and about 40 seconds to shoot it, which is Richard Wentworth's work, turning over a flag. And that was shown in Venice at the Biennale this year in support of Richard's work. So I've made it to Venice, but I hope to get there my own terms next time. Another huge event which kind of pushed me was the independence referendum. I was down in London and I just thought, you know what, I really can't sit here and not vote. I can't sit here and not campaign, so I moved up to Edinburgh. I took a part-time job at Edinburgh College of Art to teach architecture in first year, which I still do. But I did that to A, ruin my bank account, but also to give me time to campaign and to be as creatively productive as possible in the referendum campaign. I followed National Collective, which is the arts organisation who are campaigning for Yes. I followed them on Twitter when in London, and they followed me back. And that kind of changed things, so I am still just one of the national organisers for National Collective, but the campaign enabled me to use architecture and photography as disciplines to produce work. So the slide on the left is a short film called Scotland Is. It looks at geography and place, and the slide on the right is one of my pictures from some of the campaign work we were doing in Princes Street just before the vote. Yestival was a national tour which went around the whole of Scotland, and some people in the room who partook in that. That involved architectural training in terms of logistics and planning, so I could sort of utilise the discipline again. And the photo on the right is from a book called Inspired by Independence. It's a cross-multidisciplinary book of people inspired by work, and I took about maybe 26 of the portraits in that book, and there was a small fee for that. So what I'm doing now is basically, whilst teaching at Edinburgh College of Art, I'm pushing through on my photography discipline. So right now, this project is called Edinburgh 2. I'm from Edinburgh. I do love it, but I absolutely hate the city at the same time. So it's trying to widen out the visual narrative of Edinburgh from beyond the Balmoral clock and the castle into the wider suburbs, because that is what the city subsists on and where I'm from. This project is called Self-Employed, so I've been about 3 years now photographing people who are self-employed as a sort of project for myself to try and understand why people are self-employed. So I interview people and ask them and photograph and document them to sort of learn more about, do I want to be self-employed? What's it about? So where I'm at right now, it's a bit autobiographical, but I'm basically just trying to navigate between two disciplines and to see if I enjoy not being in full-time practice. But so far, apart from poor money, I'm really enjoying it. So that's where I'm at. Thank you.